Good afternoon, California. How's it going? All righty. I was nervous until about 5 seconds ago, and now it all feels good. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Can I have some quiet, please? Or else we can start to talk quietly. We can speak quietly. Okay. So, everybody, kind of a heavy title, but what I want to focus on here is the opportunity and not just the misery. So, I'm very blessed to have an incredible panel with us today. Today we have Kathy Runciman. She's the Executive Director of Earth%, co-founder of Atlas of the Future, curator of Fixing the Future, and Jamal Chalabi, who is the tour and production manager for Backlash Productions, tour manager for Massive Attack, head of sustainability for the Tour Production Group, and head of a greener touring for a greener festival. Is that correct? Greener tour.
Yeah, sorry about it. Am I on? I am on. There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I'm late to the party on climate. I was really early on a few things, but I'm late to the party. But I try and look at problems in the framework of the exponential age, which is that we have an exponentially large problem coming our way. So we need to think very large about solutions. And the music industry has not done well when it comes to R&D, generally speaking. And the music industry is about to face something unlike anything it's ever seen. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
And we're all late to the party.
Yeah. So I connected with Kathy and Jamal because I'm working on a project which is helping to solve some of these problems. We're organizing a concert in New York in September called The Big Climate Thing, a concert for the people on the planet. We're building an app which is going to help nudge people towards a more sustainable behavior. Think of it as a cross between a habit tracker and the Ice Bucket Challenge. We'll call it that. And I'm also heading up a lab called the Big Climate Lab, which is going to be a festival and touring-focused innovation studio and investment syndicate. So basically, we're going to get the creative community to fund pilots that will help solve problems in the live and festival industry. Hopefully that's an impact win, a financial win, and a PR win. So let's begin here. Kathy, how did you get into this?
My background's media, so I took a journey from art and culture media, launching Time Out magazine in about 30 cities around the world, and then through to climate storytelling, really. And now I have the very great joy of working with Brian Eno for Earth%. And Earth%'s mission really is, the phrase I like to use is unleashing the power of music in service of the planet. And I feel like if that's something that everybody in a room like this might sort of lodge into their mind, the amount that we could do together would be pretty extraordinary, because the opportunity to be someone like this with a bunch of unbelievably smart people with enormous capital in every sense of that word, who are thinking about the things that they would like to solve, is simply an opportunity to say that whatever it is you're planning to solve, you need to also be solving for the planetary crisis. Because if you're not, I would argue that you're actually underusing the incredible energy and talent and creativity and resource and capital that you have.
Incredible. And Jamal, how did you get into this?
Well, I've been a tour and production manager for nearly 3 decades. And of course, when the pandemic came in, I suddenly found out that I had no job. So we dived in to the tour and production group with a large number of tour managers and production managers, looking into how to survive COVID and how we could go back to work and live events under COVID. And also started looking at equality, diversity and inclusion, mental health and welfare, and then sustainability, when the irony there is that sustainability looked after everything else we were looking into. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months, is really just galvanizing a 360 conversation within the industry, whether it be agents, promoters, managers, artists, suppliers, festivals, venues, etc.
So can you give us a sense of the scale, either of you here? So And let's not like terrify everybody unless it has to be done. But if you had to put it on a curve, how is the climate crisis impacting the live side of touring and festivals today? And then how bad is it going to get in a sort of measurable time frame?
Well, I think we're already seeing cancellations because of bad weather. I mean, especially in the UK, but Broadmasters 2 years ago got completely trashed, which is unheard of, and we're seeing that in various places. Stage collapses and lots of insurances, you just can't insure yourself, so that's going to be a super issue. I also think that it's untried and tested because since the pandemic, we're going to shut down territories. There's going to be territories that we can't actually get gear, we can't actually get to, and that's going to be the issue. Is the territories will be shut down, and our infrastructure and our suppliers are going to disappear too.
Yeah, I think it's today in the Washington Post, there's a story about festivals and weather-related cancellations. And I think your point about insurance is incredibly important. Again, in a room full of smart tech and finance people, if somebody was to solve how you can make what's looking increasingly uninsurable insurable, then we might well protect the live music space, certainly the festival space, for much longer. But also, for me, the really important thing to say is that the problems that are going to impact music are the same problems that are going to impact most industries, every industry, all of us as humans and individuals, right? How we move, what we eat, what we wear, how we power things, right? How we build things, the built infrastructure, the homes that we live in. It's not, no industry has some like unique claim either on the problems or on the solutions. If you can solve something for music, you're going to be solving it for some other part of the world that we live in. But those same challenges we face, the same for everyone. I think there's one other really important point to make, though, and you already touched on it, which is the climate crisis is very genuinely an acute mental health issue as well, and it's an artist well-being issue. We speak all the time at Earth% to artists who are absolutely desperate to use the power that they have, and that power is their platform and their incredible trusted relationship with their fans and their audiences in a world where trust has been decimated in almost every other institution, right? Artists have a unique power of engagement, and artists are desperate to do something on this issue, but they need to be supported. They need to be backed by the industry to do it. They need to feel that they are able to use that power. And that same eco-anxiety, every young person in the world is feeling it now. So all of your future markets, all of the fan bases, they need to see action on this. There's an amazing piece of research just come out by the University of Glasgow talking about how music fans are more predisposed to, they care more about this issue, they care more about the climate issue, they want to see industry and artists doing something about it, and they think it's almost entirely invisible. Only about 3% of people surveyed could name a single initiative or solution being put forward.
So, thanks. Jamal, so to the point of, so artists, fans are everything. And when I first started to research and look into this as a topic, it occurred to me that certain artists are probably one plane ride away, one show which does not even make attempts to do anything positive for the climate, from facing backlash from fans. I think that's a critical piece to remember. So once you lose, to your point, that integrity, that artistic integrity to say, no, listen, I'm going to wear a T-shirt that says this, but I want to hop on my private jet, we're going to have problems. So what I'd love for you to dig into, Jamal, is you've worked with two artists who've taken sort of like, one, a leading stand on this, and the other, you've actually helped to implement solutions. Can you just walk us through those two?
Yeah, I mean, there's one particular artist who I'm sure you're alluding to who's actually just saying they're trying to do their best, and I fully appreciate that. There's only so much we can do right now because society is chained to the carbon economy, and we can't get away from that right now. When that's the one fundamental thing we need to do ASA. But we can show good road of direction, and there's many levels within the industry are doing that. There's a lot of venues are doing that. There's a lot of suppliers that are doing that. Talking to the bands that I did, particularly Bring Me the Horizon, it was actually really simple to do. All I needed to get was the sign off from management. Then I basically got the agent, the promoter, one of the venues to actually just fund for us to be certified by a greener festival, to find our carbon footprint. Everything else that we did was really, really straightforward. I addressed power. We made sure that all our light fixtures were LED, which was a reduction of 90% of the draw. We put our trucks on HVO fuel, which reduced the CO2 emissions by 85%. All this stuff was really, really straightforward. Also, catering was the one thing we really, really looked at. We looked at pre-ordering. Usually, a tour goes out and has caterers, and they've got, lots and lots of different food and stuff, and you've got lots and lots of choices, which is great, but that can be managed better. What we were doing a 24-hour ordering that. And so that really, really worked. We saved, I think, about 60% of waste on our catering and bill and everything else. So that was amazing. So this stuff wasn't really difficult. This is a really, really headline stuff. And I could dig deeper into every single department, because every single department you can go into how you can reduce plastics, how you can reduce power, how you can pack better. The less you carry, the less trucks you carry, the less fuel you burn. So it's the solutions are there. It's just that you come up against, well, this is the way we've always done it, and that's the things we need to change. Tech would be fantastic to help us along with that.
So could you talk about, in specifically Bring Me the Horizon, the net result I've got here was 38% reductions.
Yeah, we basically had a runway of about 3.5 months to get it together, and in 3.5 months we reduced our CO2 footprint by 38%. Most people are looking at reducing it by 50 by 2030. So that just gives you an example of how not easy, but it's very, very, very doable. If I'd given more runway, I could have done better. If we could get ahead of the creativity, that we could do better. The issue is that we're part of an organism, like with the record companies and a release. Classically, an artist will go and record an album for a year to 18 months, and then there'll be a year to 6 months of getting the creative out, and then it comes to us, and we have 6 weeks to put a tour together and build it. And without that runway, without the time to reduce the impact, that's the issue for us, because given enough time, we can make things far, far more sustainable and hit the targets we need to.
Can I just jump in on one thing and say, when we talk about making reductions of 50%, that's a globalized average. People like us in places like this, with our kind of privileges, need to be able to make reductions of 90% of our emissions in order to make some reparations and some justice towards the parts of the world that are going to suffer really tragic and devastating impacts of the climate crisis, and will have done the least to cause it. That was my heavy bit. I'm
definitely,
sorry.
yeah. And so as far as the music industry, there's probably 50 different companies working on NFT projects right now. And there's a lot of duplication. This industry tends to come together and says, hey, let's find one idea, let's replicate that across the board. So are you seeing a duplication of work in the climate activism space as it relates to the industry?
I know Kathy's got more to say on this than I have, but the one thing that I feel quite strongly about is calculators. There's a lot of great people in the space who have got calculators, carbon calculators, which is fantastic. It's just there's a lot of them out there. And along with that comes a lot of mistrust. Well, who do we use? What do we use? You know what? Let's not bother. The other thing is that obviously these calculators take R&D and they take financing to do. We need to get one calculator, one trust, one standard. That's what we really, really need to do. And there's also an argument, just to argue the devil's advocate, that we should actually just bypass the calculators. Because we should just eke out a budget in all our touring budgets and go, right, that's we need to put to carbon removals or invest in carbon tech to reduce and mitigate carbon. So cut out the middleman, cut out the expense, and just go straight to carbon removals or invest in tech.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you work at the intersection of music and tech, that's perhaps one of the most uniquely competitive environments in the world, right? We're talking about, music is a space where everything is unitized and numerized and individualized, and success is really considered in a very particular unit-measured way, right? And what climate action needs is collectivism, I'm afraid. It needs everybody, absolutely everybody, to say, when I sit down and think about what I'm going to do, then I see the planet and I see the future and I see the young people and I see my children. It doesn't matter to me whether people do it for the love of God, for the love of their kids, for the love of themselves, or for the love of money, but the future of the planet is literally at stake and therefore needs to be a stakeholder in what we do. Yes, there is a lot of duplication, I think, and I think we're missing, we've had this conversation about, on the production side, about thinking about what happened with health and safety. What happened with health and safety is everybody bitched about it for a long time, and people ooh, everybody took the piss. It's a health and safety gone mad culture, and da-da. And now you'd never see anybody in a production team not abide by the health and safety regulations. Like, we've gone past that bit. I think we're at that point with a lot of the climate and environment issues, right, where it's all entirely optional, it's all quite political, it can be quite polarizing still. And it's not regulated. Like, this stuff actually should be being regulated. It should be in contracts. It shouldn't really be up for discussion. And then if you look at sectors like film and TV, I think where they've done a better job of eliminating that duplication, they do have a single measure that they're using, and therefore they have standardized data. I think we need to look at why is it like that in film and TV, but why haven't we been able to do that in music? I don't have the answer.
Well, so I was watching Glastonbury on TV. I was close to it. I could hear it, smell it, all kinds of stuff, but I wasn't there. And look, these are massive, massive undertakings. But they're also headlined by massive, massive artists who get paid pretty much massive amounts of money for everything they do. So what's their responsibility? The larger artists, would you say? And we'll get to the smaller artists in a second, because I think the smaller artist is the opportunity for this audience. But the larger artists, I mean, shouldn't they just pay for this? Isn't this their, you fucked it up for all these years, now take it off our hands?
And I think that's the indicative of this whole sustainability space and climate. It's always somebody else's problem. And you know what, it isn't. It's your problem. It's everybody's problem. We all have to deal with it. We all have to go out and make those small changes. Yes, of course, the big bands have massive CO2 impacts and get paid the most. But the issue is it's the festivals, and actually it's not the festivals, the venues. It's legislation. I've just ducked out of doing British Summertime Festival in Hyde Park. I'm in there for 3 weeks. We are in the middle of London in Hyde Park, and we're running generators, for Christ's sake. This is one of the oldest cities in the world, and we can't run a power line into Hyde Park, for Christ's sake. I mean, yes, they're running the generators on HVO fuel, which is fantastic, but why can't we get a main line into the London grid? It's a green grid, and we'd be saving so much. So these are the things we should be looking at. It's not the festival's fault. It's not the artist's fault. It's the fact where they are. So it's a governmental, it's legislation. That's what we should be looking at. It's not, there's the field, go sort yourself out. We need government health. We need their education. We need their bleed down into society. We need everybody to understand, what's going on. So, and just to talk about the artist, everybody has been hiding behind the skirts of the artist for so long, and I think that's really, really wrong. The artists are really good for public facing. They're really, really good for the venue, for the fans. But I feel it's my responsibility, and everybody and the industry as a whole, that we need to clean our act up together so those artists can stand on the most unhypocritical platform to push this issue. It's not their issue to clean up the issue. It's us as an industry as a whole and us as a society to do it.
There's also the statistic that we looked at together this morning, and I'd love if somebody's got a more up-to-date one, but the figure I saw recently was of $43 billion generated in a year by the global music industry. Only 12% went to artists. So to ask the artists to foot the bill for this, even if you could argue that their touring around the world has created impact. I mean, the other thing that's worth saying is if you take all of music and entertainment, it's actually a relatively small part of the problem in terms of actual use of fossil fuels and emission of greenhouse gases and CO2. But what it can be is a much bigger part of the solution. And I'm obviously not saying, therefore, let's not worry about it. I wouldn't be here if I thought that. But what you can do, what I think music and the entertainment space can do is be absolutely world leading in how it does what I think of like the whole space, the sort of pillars of climate action, which are, measure the impact, reduce and remove the carbon, finance the solutions, and do the advocacy, education, and communications. Like this is this is an area like no other in terms of the capacity of what it could do to lead change in the world. It's up for grabs.
If I could just quote Mark Stevenson, who says that, no one has their favourite politician, but everybody has their favourite musician. And I think we are, a small part of it, but we have a very, very loud voice. We cross, we cross borders, we cross cultures, we cross religions, we cross language, we cross everything, and we have an enormous amount of power, and we just need to utilise that.
And the live industry is predominantly the way most artists make a living. I mean, there are 8 million artists on Spotify, 13,000 make a living from streaming. So this is literally the livelihood and lifeblood. So for the smaller artists, are there things that they can do? Are there platforms they can engage with? Are there ways of doing what they do at that sort of micro level that can lead them into the macro level?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if they're not already doing it, then there are really simple ways. And it's the same as big bands. You need to be, in all sense, you need to scale it down. You look at your budget. You've got to, looking at better logistics. It's all about really doing your job better. It's as simple as that. It's about planning it and understanding it. As far as small bands touring around, it's actually far better to go around by train than it is flying. I mean, literally, we came today on 2 trains and got here quicker than we probably could if we flew. And as far as equipment goes, use local equipment. I had an amazing example on my stage on Sunday where we had this band. I've been dealing with about 80 bands a weekend, and they're all showing up and they need this and they need that, and they're in ears and monitors and sound checks and where's my rider and all this sort of stuff. I had 4 guys get out of a van from Mississippi. They rocked up to the stage with their guitars and sticks, and they played the best set that we've had on that all weekend. They'd utterly nailed it. And it's really about talent shining through. As far as what they should do on a practical level, they should be plug and go. They should come and use local equipment. They should be hiring local. So it's about understanding what your community is. That's what other bands used to do. They used to sleep on people's floors. They used to plug into other people's gear. It's about reducing that and not being so precious about your setup, man, and just dealing with it.
So it used to be that if you went to a venture capitalist and said, hey, I've got a great idea in the music space, they'd roll their eyes, except for Jerome. They'd roll their eyes and just go, oh, you serious? The barriers to entry are too high. It's going to cost millions to license. It's a right shit show, etc. So with the live space being exponentially larger than the opportunities in this other space, how do you think VCs and entrepreneurs can help? Are there startups, are there avenues that they can go into to back? Is there technologies that you can think of that would be like, oh, if we only had that, if we only had this?
I'll go to Kathy in a second, but she's already touched on what I call the Holy Trinity, and that is, power, food, and travel. And those are the places to look at, and those are the places we really need help in.
And merch. Merch is a nightmare. I mean, the clothes that we wear are an absolute nightmare. I think it's only really become visible in recent years, but largely the clothes that we wear contribute enormously. It's more than all aviation and shipping globally. Most people don't know that. The fashion industry is a disaster. There's incredible innovation happening in that space. But same point, if you can solve sustainable merch, you have solved one of the world's genuinely greatest challenges. And again, I think what's really important is always to think very systemically. If you're trying to solve, so if 80% of the emissions come from fan travel, mostly that's a key statistic, right? If you want to solve that, what are you doing? Are you really liaising with an artist management? Is it the venue that you want to speak to? Or do you want to actually look at intervening in urban planning? Because that's probably where the answer to that is. So again, if you think about it systemically, you may be solving for music, but hopefully you're solving for much more than music, and you're solving for the planet. Gotcha.
And so as far as, in the music data side, there's technology standards. So you touched on this briefly. The film industry has done, and television industry in certain places, I'm assuming, has done fairly well on this. Are there analogs that the music industry can look to in the climate space? When it comes to standards of sort of like, this is how you would do a tour, this is how this event should be housed, this is how this should be done.
Well, I think Agree the Festival are doing great work in that playing, because obviously they have a whole certified program you have to go through. You can get certified, like I think the OVO in Glasgow has just been accredited as a sustainable.
And this is the venues become accredited.
Venues becoming there, but they've also been doing festivals for years as well,
Right.
so they can get certified. So there is an industry standard. It's almost like a kite mark,
Yeah.
and that's growing and getting bigger and better. But it needs to happen more, and would love to see that investment.
I think also it needs to not be a pay-to-play thing. So when you mentioned the smaller artists, who, in my experience, are keener perhaps even to do things. Also, as is often true in life, often people with not very much are enormously generous. They want to make the change. They're willing to give up, often from quite smaller income streams, something to contribute to that solution. There are organisations doing incredible work in this space. So Greener Festival, you've mentioned organisations like Julie's Bicycle, Equilibrium, who are looking at fan travel, On-Road Media, who are looking at really how do you communicate stuff. There's amazing organisations. They're all underfunded, it's worth my saying. I mean, that really they are. There is, so thinking about how we move the money, I'm clearly sitting here thinking that the solution is not an either-or investment or philanthropy answer. I think it's both. I would like to make a sort of pitch for the idea of like hoarding our wealth is not going to solve this, and therefore thinking about both impact investment that is going to solve some of these really, really pressing issues, but also how might you give back? How could you contribute? So a lot of this work, I think, would be more visible, more standardized, and better used, and available to artists of every level, not only the ones that can hire an incredible sustainability team. If we could fund that whole music climate ecosystem better.
So, well, that's a good question. Is there a music climate ecosystem, and are there startups that you've seen who are going, oh, I want to have a whack at this bit, or I want to have a whack at this bit? Or is that something, we're in a music tech conference, is there a climate, because if you're a startup, I've been in this situation, you're fighting for every last dollar, you're trying to figure out what is the maximum impact I can do. So for some reason we all converge upon fairly small total addressable markets. This is a really big one. You get this right. We were talking to Jerome about this. You could nail sports, which is huge as well. So cross-platforming, as we look at these things, these seem to me like extraordinary opportunities for investment.
Yeah, I mean, I've only really seen apps like Equilibrium being one of them, which is a way you can offset your travel, and that really is it. It's focused on the music community, but it's all about offsetting your travel, and that's it. The only other thing I have heard of it, which was actually was on Sounds Like a Plan. There was an interesting lady from Australia, a new touring musician, and was getting very, very frustrated, and basically decided to open her own solar panel farm. And getting a load of musicians to invest in it. So they had this, they have now their own economy. So it was only open to the music community, but they have a solar farm in New South Wales, which is pumping out. Use the sunshine.
I mean, it's Alison Tickell, the founder of Julie's Bicycle, as I say, if you don't know them, look at the work they do and the resources that they have, because they're extraordinary. She said to me the other day, I've been 14, 15 years in this space, and we still haven't solved how people at festivals and major events can have a drink in a sustainable way, how we deal with single-use plastics. There's been some movement on that. There are better options, but actually nobody has nailed it. So it's interesting both how really thorny some of these issues are, right? How complex it is when it has to work for a massive variety of venues and different sites. So, but the size of that prize is absolutely enormous. Everybody would adopt it tomorrow if you nailed it. I mean, tomorrow. It's one of those problems that people, that's what I'm saying. Sustainable merch. How do how can people have a drink when they're going to be, likely to lose that cup in the festival ground somewhere over the 4 days of joy? Things like that. So the prize is big, I think.
So if there's one thing that this audience should take away, one action that they could take, what do you think it would be?
I mean, mine would just be join the movement, really. Be part of it. I absolutely, so there is just incredible joy in being part of trying to solve these issues, along with any of the other things that you want to do. I would love to talk to every single person here about the magic, the magic that could be made by the people in this room to do the work that I sort of passionately believe that we need to do, and say, and be the person in your organization that has the conversation, that brings it into the conversation. You know, in that last session, which was fantastic as an introduction to everybody, 2 people used the word sustainability. I would love to come here next year, if I would be had, and hear every single person have something to say. They may not use that word, right, but have something to say in it. So that, my takeaway is, it's wide open, but it's also a beautiful space, right, to be part of, and so join.
I just think everybody should go away, make their a personal commitment, and use their influences, you know, both at work and whatever social circles you get into. And the one point I also is, don't wait or ask for permission to do it. Just do it, because that's what everybody's due, just sitting on their laurels and not getting on with it. Just get out there and do it. Don't ask for permission. And the other thing I would wish for is, can we have the revolution back in music, please?
And with that, we will end it. Thank you very much, everybody. Jamal Shalabi and Kathy Runciman.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. And we were discussing with Benji a month ago about an accelerator. We are running an acceleration program, as you know, with California. And maybe next year, let's continue the discussion. The global theme will be climate change and how the tech can solve stuff in the music industry. So why not having this team within the acceleration program? With pleasure. Are you okay for some questions?
Yes,
yeah.
Course. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Jérôme. I feel like, especially in the UK, this is like a very overwhelming area to navigate, because you have a greener festival, but then you have like net zero carbon events, positive impact events, sustainable event alliance, Julius Bicycle, Music Declares Emergency, and that's just to name a few of them. So it's very hard to get to know what kind of standard of or best practices should I follow. Still, the UK is like the most advanced place in the planet regarding event sustainability. Well, I want to know, where do you think that are the main pain points when it comes to measuring the impact? I've been measuring the impact of festivals in Chile since 2017. We started with economic and tourism impact based in the Wish You Were Here report methodology. Then we added social, cultural, and lately environmental impact. And well, we're kind of in the middle point between a tech-driven consultancy service for impact measurement and a software as a service, where our added value is that we provide like the data storytelling or impact storytelling for the accountability to the different stakeholders. So I want to know, like, where you think is the main pain point, like methodology, data gathering, reporting.
I'll pass to Kathy on the associations and the alliances and the various people you've mentioned, because she's far more qualified to talk about than I am. The one overriding thing is really power, which is just absolutely enormous. I think just to briefly outline what we've been doing is that, you know, every band will send in its power requirements. And they're actually not measuring their actual power needs. They're actually just measuring their plug socket and what that can draw. So you have a band speccing into a festival. Each will be giving you the size of its plug. 400 amps upstage, 200 amps downstage, another 400 stage left. So this is enormous. So you've got all these bands doing it. So that festival then will go, well, we need this much power, we need that many generators. When in actual fact, they're actually drawing far less than that. And they're only drawing that at peak time, so only when the headliner's going on, when they're full bore with all their lights. So we really are over-speccing our festivals enormously. We're over-speccing when firstly, we should be drawing from the grid. Secondly, we're over-speccing our generators. In 2019, we burnt, literally just to keep our generators switched on, to run at peak power, to take care of all these over-spec power, we burnt 60 Olympic swimming pools of diesel, which amounts to 450,000 litres of diesel, which is around 90 million pounds worth of fuel burnt up in smoke that we didn't need to do. How many batteries could that buy? How many startups could that start up? So that's one thing that we just need to change, and change now.
I think you've made a really important point, and I don't have the answer to it, but I think the UK has a real leadership position on this, but the problem is that the work is largely not visible and very hard to navigate. And one of the things that Live Green, one of the umbrella organisations working in the space, have been trying to do is raise the funding to like pull all of this together into a single knowledge hub, and they're finding that hard to do, which is just slightly representative of the frustrations of, trying to resource, scale up the ambition, make available the incredible knowledge there is. I think they identified 400 different data points, pieces of research, and things that need to be pulled together and then surfaced. I think the other thing that's very hard to measure and that people are mostly just ignoring is that we find it very hard to measure the real environmental impact of the internet, right, and of streaming, I have no idea, actually, maybe from a Greener Festival, when Glastonbury measures its impact, do they also measure the impact of the BBC broadcast and how many people around the world watch that and the power required to watch that and how many people watch that on what device and what therefore is being streamed? Those are the kind of things that are largely seen, I think, at the moment as just too difficult. But I think they need to not become too difficult.
It's a startup's dream space to be in. I mean, that's literally the startup's dream space to be in, is anywhere where there's all this fuzzy data, we could fix that. If we get that data, all of a sudden we can start to optimize along those lines. So, yeah. You had a question, sir?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So my name is Jamie. I'm actually from a startup that's pitching tomorrow called Hawker, which is a merch solution. So I was pleased to hear you mention merch a number of times, because we do hope to go some way to tackling some of those issues. But that's not my question. I'm just interested to know, I used to run festivals as well, and I'm interested to know, there's something that I don't feel like you mentioned very much, which I think is potentially quite a big driver, and that is costs and decision making. I feel from my experience, and I'm interested to know what you feel, a lot of this stuff just falls by the wayside, not because it's not possible, but because it costs more. And somewhere along the decision-making process, someone makes a decision based on financials that basically it would cost more to do it green, let's do it cheaper. How do we tackle that?
I think that's a really good question, and it's something that is really close to my heart, because I actually really believe that doing sustainable is actually a cheaper way of doing it. A lot of people are out there going, yeah, great, sustainability, but who's going to pay for it, mate? And that's just not the case. We're losing less energy, we're using less packaging, we're moving less stuff. All this stuff is less and less and less. And so I think it's a real myth. I'm actually trying to speak to an economist at the moment and trying to work that out, how we can actually show people that going sustainable is actually cheaper. I'm talking to there's two light companies and a video company who are actually doing great work in their space, but they've got solar panels on their roofs, their LED lights within their factories. They're looking at their planning of how they move their equipment. They're designing how to pack and minimise their truck space. All this sort of stuff. It's actually bringing costs down. And it's actually, I personally believe a sustainable business and a streamlined business is a much better business. Any business that's creating waste and is not in a circular economy is not good business.
I think also, the cost of living crisis is to some degree partly connected to the climate crisis, right? And also everything can only be made more expensive by an increasingly devastated environment in which we are trying to do things. So I agree, for the smaller artist, for the smaller organisation, there will be pain points in that. And I think that the organisations with the power and the financial resource to step up need to do something about that, to kind of open up that possibility to other people. But everything is linked, right? And in fact, probably the biggest public campaign that's about to launch in the UK will be one to try to say, it is an energy crisis. We keep calling it the cost of living crisis in the UK. It's such a convenient political shorthand for a million things, but it is. It's a fossil fuel crisis, principally.
Another question?
Yeah, my name is Jocelyn from a company called Bridger. I have a question. What I see from what you say, it's a lot about frugality, doing the same thing, using less stuff. Don't you think that the next step would be a sort of untech things, or reduce, or degrow, or something like that?
I find this very interesting. I was like, I wonder if we can use the word degrowth in a space like this. I'm working quite hard to have a conversation that's not political, really, but I think that the idea of infinite growth on the planet is a complete myth, and we need to see that. Some people may be aware of something every year called Earth Overshoot Day. So it's the day in the year in which we've used all of the resources that it's possible to extract from the Earth before we're basically, we've tipped over the edge of what the Earth can support. That day this year will be July the 28th. So, about halfway, a little bit more than halfway through the year. I think that partly what you're talking about is the absolutely fundamental culture change that we will need to see, one where we really see that that less is a form of abundance, actually, that sufficient is abundant, right? And that excess and extractivism, is not the key to happiness. It comes back to some of what we talked about, right? That we can see the mental health impacts of how we live. But that said, I'm a passionate believer that if we solved the climate crisis, we absolutely have created a world in which we would all want to live. We would have solved, climate justice is gender justice, is racial justice. These things are intimately connected. We would solve the governance and political issues that we face. I mean, there is I run the risk of sounding like, being able to be sort of painted as the sort of mad hippie that people find very easy to reject when you get into an environmental argument, but there is a better world. And one of the things that artists are absolutely brilliant at doing, and the reason that music, again, can be so powerful, is artists can help us not just imagine that world, but create it. But yes, we cannot aspire to infinite economic growth.
And I just, probably doing myself out of a job here, but I would love to see acts actually stop the arm race of production, reduce their production and just purely focus on their talent. Because we're seeing a lot of shows out there which is just all bells and whistles and not much talent. I'd like to see the reverse of that. So I know that's quite a revolutionary statement, but hey, there you go. Going out on a limb, guys.
Great. John?
Sorry, I can't remember your name. Jamie. You kind of answered his question, but I do want to press it again because to Benji's point, this is a really nice space for startups to operate in. There are clearly big problems here. And so is it cheaper that we should be ultimately chasing? Is a cheaper alternatives what need to be generated? Cheaper, sustainable alternatives? Or is there something else that we can seek to solve as startups? Are we just looking for, is this only, a switch is only going to happen when cheaper becomes a reality?
So I don't think that the first thing that I would say is I have no brand loyalty that is stronger than my desire, for instance, to see plastic eliminated from all supply chains. There is no brand I would not switch from if somebody provided the alternative. There's a huge numbers of people willing to pay for the for solutions, and they cannot find them. Merch, it's very, very difficult what you're trying to solve, but if you can solve it, genuinely believe there are many, many people who will pay a little bit more. We have to be very careful of creating an elitist space where the more sustainable solutions exclude many, many people. Then we're into a slightly different economic argument about how we rebalance some of that stuff. And again, it could be done in many ways. But no, I don't. I think we have a really acute set of problems right now that make the idea of doing anything that's more expensive really problematic. I think that we're living in the world of distraction of multiple crises that risks stopping us from solving what we really need to solve. And I'm aware that none of this is an answer. I don't know, but I think that in a space like this, there are plenty of people who wouldn't say it's only about making it cheaper. That was a terrible answer, wasn't it? It was just like no answer. It's the best I could do. Sorry.
I think the only thing I can really, I don't think making it cheaper is the right phrase. I think making it better. I think I can only really talk about my community, which is the music, industry community, the music live industry community. And all I can say about those people is that we We excel at putting on great shows in a really small amount of times. You know, with the challenges that we do, most people are like, you brought this stuff in here this morning. You built this arena show in 6 hours, and you're going to do a performance, and you're going to take it out by 1 a.m. tonight. They've got no concept of what we do and how many trucks we unpack, and how we fly that stuff, and how we power it, and get it to the next town by 6 a.m. the next day to do the same. And what I see is the amount of talent within my community. And that needs to be galvanized. That needs to be, these guys are incredible at what they do. My hat's off to them. From the guitar tech to the lighting tech to the video tech, the amount of knowledge there that isn't being enhanced or even spotlighted because people only see the singer, that's what we need to focus on. And if tech wants to get behind it, that's what you should be looking at.
Brian Eno wants to launch Roadies for Future, if anyone wants to back that. But it's so true. The talent, the assets of music, beyond the songs and the money, are vast. The talent and the skills and the creative possibility. And if we could put all of those assets into use, I think we'd get there without it being about whether it's cheaper or not.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, guys. It was really insightful.
Thank you. Great questions, people.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Benji, for having curated this panel. Thank you, Jamal and Cathy, for being with us.